We didn't test it beforehand, but that's good. If you pray for patience and you pray, Lord, I just need some patience right now, you might find yourself being in a situation where you have to use one of these and mic these up because it takes so much patience. I never think about it. It's always like I'm getting ready, like, oh, yeah, you got to go put the thing on. And it's like, oh, yeah, I forgot. Man, I put my stuff up here when I first got here, but it's been buried. So many people have been up here. All right. Is there anybody here who's just had, maybe you've had one of those weeks or maybe a span of like 2 weeks where you're just like, after the week is over or the 2 weeks is over, you're just like, man, I just want to go be with Jesus. He can just come take me home right now. He can just come down tonight and we can just get out of here. I forgot where it was at. I was listening to somebody, but it was like something like this. So if I got a call from God and I picked up, and he's like, hey, I'm going to have a chariot outside of Chicopee Baptist Church tonight at 12 o'clock midnight, and I'm taking anybody with me who wants to come. How many people here would be out there waiting with me if I told you? If I told you, everybody's like, yeah, I'm done, man. Man, yeah. So definitely been one of those weeks for me, and I know for a lot of my friends. So I needed to hear this. I needed to find all this just as much as I wanted to come here, and hopefully just as much as you needed as well. So before we get started, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, I love you so much, and thank you so much for even the hard times that we go through, Lord, where we know that you're forming us, you're testing us, and you're making us better people than we were the day before. And you're changing us in such a powerful and just supernatural way, Lord. I pray that today we would be just given peace, God, knowing that you're always working in us, God, even in our failures, even in hard times, even in trials, God, you're always with us and you're always working through us, God. And at the same time, God, you're always challenging us, God. You're always taking us to a place, God, that's requiring us to give up more of ourselves and just give more power to you, God. Pray that as we look at that, God, you would just allow every ear to be open, Father. You would allow every heart to be open, Lord. I pray against, Lord, any forces of darkness in this place, Father. I pray that they'd be gone, Lord, that you would just take hard hearts and break them, Lord, and that your glory would just dwell in this place as we're here with your word today. Lord, I love you so much, and I thank you for just another opportunity to be in your house and worship you today. Lord, we love you. Pray all these things in the name of Jesus Christ alone. Amen. All right, so if you have your Bibles with you, you can open up to Genesis 28. Genesis 28. I had one passage you might find if you're following along on a YouVersion. There's kind of one chapter, but I've decided to tell a story today instead of doing that. We'll still be talking about the same message and everything, but we're going to be talking about the life of Jacob. So as you're turning to Genesis 28, you're going to find just kind of like as you look over the Bible, kind of maybe over into chapter 27, just this kind of area is kind of the beginnings of Jacob's journey with the Lord. So we've been talking about Abraham for a while now, and we're kind of moving a little bit farther into the future. So Jacob is Abraham's grandson. So Abraham had Isaac, Isaac had Jacob, and he also had Esau, and they had other sons, but just some context. So we're in the book of Genesis, and we are here at the story of Jacob. And I want to start by, I know that we just had everybody, we just prayed, but I would like for everybody to close your eyes once again. And I want you to think about somebody who had a lot of influence in your life when you were a kid. And this could be a parent, this could be somebody who was like a close relative or somebody that you really looked up to when you were a kid, somebody that had a lot of influence in your life. You would do, if this person told you to do something, you would do it, no question. And this person was just the greatest. And maybe as you're thinking about him, what was it about them that just drew you to them? Did they have a vast amount of knowledge, or were they really funny? Did they always do what was right? Or did they make mistakes? Did they seem perfect in your eyes, or did it seem like you could see that there were cracks in the surface where they did things that weren't 100% good all the time? So I want you to open your eyes again, and I want to invite you into kind of something that I sort of found when I was going over this. a lot of times when we're kids, we look up to adults in our lives and it seems like they're almost like they're perfect, like there's nothing wrong with them. And later on in life, we might look back and see, oh yeah, they were a person just like me, and they had struggles and they had trials and things like that. But a lot of times, it's the same with the Bible. We look at the characters in the Bible and we think, man, these incredible people, if only I could just be more like them, then I would have it made. And we think that they're these incredible people who we need to be just like them, and they live such perfect lives. And I'm going to invite you to just kind of take that idea and kind of throw it out of your brain, because today we're going to be looking at the story of Jacob, and I hope that as we look at his life, I want us to begin to see how God is always shaping us and always growing us. Even in times where we experience times where we're so close with him, or times when we feel far from him, he's always working in us, and he's always challenging us to do even greater things for him in our lives. So as we begin the story in chapter 28, it's actually about, so Jacob is sent away from his home where he grew up. So some backstory on this, we have Jacob's life as it begins actually in his mother's womb with his brother Esau, and they're actually warring with each other, and God makes a prophecy, or he speaks something over Jacob's life that is going to come true, and he speaks to his mother Rebekah, and he says, there are two nations in your womb, and they're both wrestling. And he also says, but the elder son shall serve the younger son. So the son who's oldest is actually going to serve the son who's youngest. And God says this, and he says it, and he's just like, this is how it's going to be. That's exactly what's going on, and that's how it's going to be. So we pick up the story with Jacob and Esau being born, and in the story of their birth, Esau comes out first, so he's the firstborn, but Jacob has his hand on his heel as they're coming out of their mother's womb. And this is kind of sort of foreshadowing kind of how his life is going to be in the coming years as he begins to grow up. So the first thing to note is that his name, Jacob, actually means deceiver, or somebody who cheats, like a liar or a stealer. Like you could think of somebody who cons people or something like that. So that's actually what his name means. So if you are looking for a name for your son, then there you go, right out of the Bible. So that's what his name means. And we see the first instance of some tension between Jacob and Esau as they grow up. And Esau is a man of the field. He's a real man. He has Bible talks about how he has a lot of hair. He was a very hairy man, and he hunted, and that is what he did. He went out and he hunted animals, and that's what he did. He was a real man. He was like a John or Christian or one of those guys, and he was really strong, and yeah, so he's got that going on. And then it talks about how Jacob was kind of a man who dwelt inside of tents. So he's kind of like an inside kind of guy. He's his mom's favorite. Esau is their dad's favorite. So there's like some favoritism going on. So Jacob's kind of the guy who stays inside and cooks, apparently, because we come to the story where many of you may remember, maybe not, maybe you don't know this story, but Jacob actually gets Esau to give him his birthright for a bowl of soup. And this is very important because we see Esau comes in from the field. He's hungry. He's starving. He's just been out hunting. And Jacob has the soup, and he's just like, man, I need some soup. I need some food. And Jacob's like, well, if you want this, you give me your birthright. So birthright is kind of different in society now. The best way I could try to phrase this is, so imagine if my dad had tons of houses, tons of cars, and just loads of money. He actually doesn't have tons of cars and tons of houses and tons of money. But if he did, and it was me, and let's say I had like two younger brothers. So I was the firstborn, and then I had two younger brothers, and it was time for my dad to die, and it was time for him to give his estate and all his possessions to the children. I would get half of everything. And then what was left would be divided up amongst, the other kids. So this is huge. The birthright is huge. I mean, this is everything. We think about Abraham and all the stuff that he gathered and possessed, and we think about Isaac and all how he grew in his flocks and his wealth and everything. So this is huge. And Esau is basically, it talks about how he despised his birthright. He was just like, yeah, sure, I'll give it to you because right now I need this soup. Like, what good is my birthright right now? So bam, Jacob gets the birthright by, basically gives it for a bowl of soup, which doesn't even begin to compare. So he gets his brother on that one, and then he begins to kind of work up a scheme involving his mother where now he has the birthright, but he has to get the blessing now. So the blessing is something that's also given by Isaac, and the blessing is actually kind of interesting, and it's kind of weird when you think about it because there's not a ton of information on it, but it's basically something where it's kind of like a spiritual passing down of like spiritual authority, or kind of later we're actually going to come to see where it's actually the promise God made to Abraham is carried on in succession through these blessings. When somebody blesses someone, and we see Isaac, how thinks he's blessing Esau, but really he's blessing Jacob. So he's actually kind of imparting this supernatural thing and God works through it, and it's the promise. So his mom, who favors Jacob more than Esau, is just kind of like, okay, we'll find some way to where you can get the blessing. And so Jacob's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm really nothing like Esau. I'm a smooth man. And he talks about how basically he's like, my father knows that I'm a deceiver when he's saying that. He knows who I am. And so anyway, they decide to work together anyhow, and he gets some fur from an animal and puts it on his arms and basically disguises himself to try to come off as Esau. And this actually wouldn't have been very difficult because it talks about how Isaac was so old that he couldn't see very well. So you could think of this as he was an old man, couldn't really see, his senses weren't good, but you could also take this as a form of like spiritual blindness, that he was spiritually blind to what was going on in his household. There was so much favoritism, there was deception, this was nothing good was going on here. So, but Jacob succeeds and he gets the blessing from Isaac, and he blesses him. So now he's taken the two biggest things that Esau was supposed to get, and this comes to Esau's attention, and he basically plans to kill Jacob. He's just like, well, when my father dies and the time of mourning is over, I'm going to go and kill my brother because he took everything that was supposed to be mine. So Jacob finds out about it, and Jacob runs away. So he leaves the land of Canaan. So this would later go on to actually be the land of Israel. This is, the promised land where Abraham and Isaac spent time in. So he's leaving Canaan, and he's going somewhere else. He's running away. And on his way out, you'll see in chapter 28, verse 10, talks about Jacob's dream. And this is Jacob's ladder, where actually as he's leaving, he has a dream, and he sees this ladder, and angels are going up and down the ladder, and God appears. And God says that he'll be with him. He promises him his presence. He makes a very similar promise that we've heard before, where he talks about how he's going to bless the families of the earth. His descendants are going to be many. Same promise that he gave to Abraham. So God's saying, Jacob, I'm with you. Then Jacob gives kind of a reply. Now you have to realize Jacob didn't have the Bible. Jacob didn't have any of the resources we have to know about God. He just sees this vision, and God tells him all this stuff. And so he's like, okay. So Jacob rose early in the morning in verse 18 of chapter 28. So Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on its top. He called the name of that place Bethel. However, previously the name of the city had been Luz. Then Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and will keep me on this journey that I take and will give me food to eat and garments to wear, and I return to my father's house in safety, then the Lord will be my God. So he kind of makes this deal where he's saying, okay, if God gives me all these things, then he'll be my God. If he leads me back into this land and he takes care of my needs and everything, then, he'll be my God. So we see Jacob kind of in this strange, he has this encounter with God. So he's like, okay, if you take care of me, then I'll kind of, I'll keep, playing this role that you have for me. So Jacob goes on to dwell at Laban's land, Laban's property. And Laban is the brother of his mom. And Jacob decides to he winds up marrying two of Laban's daughters. Originally, he wanted Rachel, who was Laban's younger daughter. So Laban's like, okay, you want my daughter, and you're here, you're on the run from, your family, but I want you to work the land for 7 years, and then I'll give you Rachel. So he worked for 7 years to get Rachel as his wife. So Yeah, it does talk about that he loved her so much it went by like a few days. I don't know. I mean, that's pretty incredible, but there you go. So, but on the night of their wedding, somehow, I don't know, they have whatever marriage ceremony that they did, and then he sleeps with her, and then he wakes up and he's like, oh no, this isn't Rachel. This isn't the woman that I was promised. And so Laban basically pulls this ritual, custom, tradition of the land thing and says, well, technically, we actually give the firstborn first. It's not our custom to give the younger daughter. We always give the firstborn daughter first. So then he says, but if you still want her, you can work another 7 years and I'll give her to you. So he works another 7 years and gets Rachel. And then we go on to see that he worked another 6 years to get the flocks of Laban. And that's kind of where the story kind of starts to we see kind of a change in Jacob's life. He's been working for this man who, changes his wages 7 times. And basically now Jacob is the one who's getting conned. Jacob is the one who's getting cheated. And he finds himself in this land, but he knows that the Lord is with him. He remembers the promise that the Lord made to him, that the Lord is with him. So as we go along, we see Jacob kind of makes he does something very interesting with Laban's flocks. So he's kind of a shepherd looking after Laban's flocks. He has 2 of his daughters, so he has sons, and he devises kind of this plan. There's a lot of different opinions on this passage where it talks about how Jacob with the speckled and spotted and striped sheep and what he did and how that was done. But basically, he says that he makes more comments like, so my honesty will answer for me later. When you come to my wages, everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, will be considered stolen. So just kind of an excerpt. If you go back and read the story, hopefully you go back and read the whole story of Jacob. But basically, he kind of does this thing where he speeds up the breeding process of all the sheep. And basically the Lord blesses him by making sure that all of the solid colored ones, the ones that he was going to get, Laban was going to get all the speckled and striped and other ones, and he was going to get the solid ones. So he kind of he does this thing where basically his flocks are stronger and more numerous than Laban's. It's one of those things, sometimes you read stuff in the Bible and you're like, man, I wish I had somebody from like thousands and thousands of years ago who was a shepherd who could come and explain to me what's going on here, but I just don't know what's going on here, but God is blessing him, and so God blesses him with a lot of flocks, and he's making him wealthy. And if we remember back to, Rebecca, his mom, kind of using deception and stuff to make sure that the elder serves the younger, it almost makes me think of Hagar and Abraham. We see how, as we've been going through the life of Abraham, we've seen people try to assist God in making sure, you've made this promise, God, but we're going to try to speed this up, or we're going to try to do something to make this happen a little bit faster. And usually nothing good comes of it. And we're already seeing that nothing good is coming of it because we have 2 brothers and one wants to kill the other one. And, the question could be asked, if she would have, what if nothing would have happened? Would somehow, God would have had some way to, bring all this together? I don't know. We can sit around and ask what if, but this is clearly another case of people are trying to use their own power to try and help God or make his promises go a little bit faster, and it's not working. But we see here Jacob going from being, this man who's, doing all this deception. He himself gets deceived, but he has an encounter with God where now he's trusting in the Lord to provide for him. And that's exactly what he tells Rachel and his wives and children when he leaves. So it comes about when he has Joseph, who is one of his sons from Rachel, who will go on to be his favorite son. Of course, the story of Joseph is an incredible story, and that's for some other sermon, some other time. But at that time, when he's born to him, God comes to him and says, okay, it's time for you to go back. You're going back to the land from where you came. And so this just seems, it's been 20 years, but the last time I left, my brother wanted to kill me. So, that's kind of, that's a weighty thing. And so he decides, he's like, you know what? The Lord has been with me. He has caused me to prosper, and I've trusted in him, even though all this has been going on with Laban. I've been doing the best that I can, and God has been with me, and I know that he'll be with me. So Jacob sets out to go back to the land, and Laban pursues him because he basically slips out from Laban and takes all that, he had basically taken from Laban, his daughters and all the sons that he had and all the sheep and everything. And he, is leaving, and Laban tries to pursue him, and God actually comes to Laban and says, look, you can't say anything good about him, don't say anything bad about him, don't lay a finger on him. And God's basically saying, this is my man. And so Laban comes to him, and they work out an agreement. And we see in chapter 32, which is this is it. So chapter 32, so the story begins to heat up. So we have this whole backstory of Jacob as he's, was involved in all this deception, and he was a liar, and then he gets to Laban, and then he gets lied to, and he's wrestling with, all these things that are happening in his life. But he continues to trust in the Lord. But now the trial is even greater, because now he has to face his brother again. So in chapter 32, it says, now Jacob went on his way. The angels of God met him. Jacob said when he saw them, this is God's camp. So this seems it's kind of like, whoa, they just threw in there that he met some angels. But this is important, because just as when he left the land, he saw angels, when he comes back to the land, he sees angels again. So he's coming back into, God's country. He's coming back into the land of his, forefathers. When he talks about, the God of my father, Isaac, the God of Abraham is with me. This is their land. So the angels meet him. And he is still very anxious about meeting Esau. And he sends out, people come to him like, hey, Esau has 400 men with him, and they're coming to meet you. And he's like, oh my goodness, 400 people, I'm going to get waxed. So he splits up his company into two. He divides his company in two. And basically he's just like, well, if he attacks one, at least I'll still have half of my other, family and friends and belongings. And he prays this prayer in verse 9. So chapter 32, verse 9, he prays another prayer to God. O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your relatives, and I will prosper you. I am unworthy of all the loving kindness and all the faithfulness which you have shown to your servant. For with my staff only I have crossed the Jordan, and now I have become two companies. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he will come and attack me and the mothers and the children. For you said, I will surely prosper you and make your descendants as the sand of the sea, which is too great to be numbered. And it talks about how he spent the night there and he makes camp there. But the important thing about this is that at the end of the prayer, he's still afraid of Esau. He's still scared, and he prays an incredible prayer at the beginning where he's confessing. He's saying, God, you've done all these things for me, and I don't deserve any of these things. But I'm praying that you would protect me because you made this promise, and I don't want to die. So, he's saying, I'm still afraid, but, I'm praying this prayer. And really, we see this, and of course his last prayer, kind of saying, hey, if you give me all these things, then, I'll follow you. And God blesses him, but we still see him, growing. God not only gives him food and clothing and his presence, but he gives him flocks, he gives him wives, he gives him children. He blesses him beyond what he asked God to. So he sees God's faithfulness when he's serving with Laban. So he continues to grow to know God, and now he's here reflecting on the promise again. He's like, hey, God, you promised to do this, so I'm trusting in you to accomplish this. And he's still afraid, though. He doesn't have peace. He doesn't leave the prayer saying, yes, God has already said this, so I'm just going to kick back and stroll over the ford of the river, and I'm going to go and meet Esau, and it's all going to be good to go. He's still scared, and we see it in his actions. Because right after this, he begins to send his servants with basically gifts for Esau as he sends them across the river, more and more people to go and meet them. He's like, when you go, say, hey, these belong to Jacob, and I'm giving them to my lord Esau, using a very powerful title. And he's trying to say, maybe if I send Esau a bunch of gifts, then he'll be okay with me, and he won't want to kill me or anything. So we see that after he sent all of his possessions, all of his servants, and his family across the river, he's left there alone. And this is the key part of the story. So Genesis 32, verse 24, then Jacob was left alone. That's the first thing to realize. Jacob was left alone. There was nobody else with him. He didn't have any of his possessions. He didn't have any of his friends. He didn't have any of his family. He didn't have any of his servants. They were all gone, and it's just him alone. And a man wrestled with him until daybreak. So that's it. It just says, and a man came and wrestled with him until daybreak. And we're going to later on, we're going to see that this man is God. But so important right here to see that Jacob was left alone. And in his times of, when he's alone out in the desert, when he sleeps and he sees the vision of the ladder, or when he prays, or here, it's always alone. He's always alone dealing with, this, here he's like, man, I have to face Esau. Eventually, I myself am going to actually have to go. I'm going to have to go and see what's going to happen. But a man comes and wrestles with him until daybreak. So he wrestles with a man all night. And this is not a dream. This is not a vision. This does not say that he fell asleep and then he had a dream that he wrestled with a man. No, he wrestled with a man until daybreak. It was an actual physical altercation. When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, that's the man had not prevailed against Jacob, he touched the socket of his thigh. So the socket of Jacob's thigh was dislocated while he wrestled with him. And so basically, God is here. Christ is here, in the incarnate Christ is here wrestling with Jacob, and he's not overpowering him, so he actually reaches down and physically hurts Jacob. He takes his hip out of socket. And this is incredible because we see, number one, does that mean that, why could Jesus not defeat Jacob? Why could God not defeat Jacob? He's here, God is in the flesh wrestling with him. Why is this not, why can he not defeat him? And another, great observation, great point is why did God reach down and injure him? So we keep reading, and then the man said to Jacob, let me go, for the dawn is breaking. But he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And there's something so important here because this is the keystone of the change in Jacob's life. He realizes that even though he has been hurt by this man who he's wrestling, he's saying, I know who you are, and I know you are the one that needs to bless me. I know that the only blessing I need is from you. So it doesn't matter what's going on right now. It doesn't matter that I'm trying to fight against you. It doesn't matter that you've just injured me. It doesn't matter what's going on. He realizes that the only thing that matters right now is getting that blessing. That's why he continues to struggle with him and hold on to him, even though he's injured. And this is incredible because we see, he says, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him and said, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And he blessed him there. So we see God basically through wrestling with him and allowing Jacob to fight with him, he basically works an incredible change in Jacob's life where he says, your name's not Jacob anymore. Your name's not, it has nothing to do with deceiver anymore. Your name is Israel now. And that happens because Jacob has changed. Jacob has grown. We see him growing through all of this, coming to a greater understanding of God until finally he's facing this fear and he prays and he's still afraid and God comes and he faces him. And he has to wrestle. He has to wrestle with God, and he realizes that he can't do it on his own power. He keeps wrestling with him, and God hurts him, but he keeps on wrestling, and he, through his own power and through his own, stubbornness that's been displayed all throughout the book, he gets that blessing from God because he realizes it's not about my own power. It's not about what I think. It's not about me. It's about God, and it's about what he can do. And so we see not only in the end does God prevail, because off of Israel, that's the name of the nation of God's people in the Old Testament. And this totally, shows such we can think about, Joshua as they're about to go into the land of Canaan years and years from now, Israel is a huge nation of people, and he's saying, I'm going to go and I'm going to give you the land. And they have to face up, are we going to trust in ourselves or are we going to trust in God? Because we don't have, on paper, we're going to lose this battle if we go in here, but we're going to trust in God and we're going to go and we're going to take the land. And we see this replayed all throughout Israel's history as you read about the nation, and things keep on afflicting them. Things keep on, coming against them, and they keep on relying on God and not relying on themselves, and he's constantly giving them deliverance. Or sometimes they do decide to rely on themselves and they turn from God, and then they wind up, in exile, and God has to discipline them. Just as we see him interacting with Jacob here, he has to wrestle with them. And it's such a fitting name for Jacob, but it's also going to be a fitting name for the whole nation. And of course, we see Jacob's courage we see it manifested in chapter 33. You keep on reading 33:1. Then Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids. He put the maids and their children in front, and Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. But he himself passed on ahead of them and bowed down to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother. Then Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. So we see he comes limping over the river, and he passes on ahead of his family and everybody to face Esau first, and he falls down and he bows down to Esau. And it's incredible because even though he's hurt, if he has to fight Esau, he's clearly not in the place to do it, but it doesn't matter because spiritually he knows that he's seen the face of God, and he sees Esau, and Esau embraces him, and there's no hard feelings. God's already done this work clearly here in Esau's heart, and there's no longer any animosity between them. And it's such an incredible story because Jacob had to let go of his own schemes. Jacob had to let go of his own plans. Jacob had to let go of all of that so that he could experience peace and have courage going to Esau, knowing, I don't exactly know what's going to happen, but I know that God's going to be with me. And that is, such a powerful message from this story because it plays right into how our lives still continue today with God. Granted, if you go out tonight and you start to pray, I'm not going to say that, God's going to come down in the form of man and wrestle you and try and, but what this passage does show is that spiritually we still wrestle and struggle with fears and things in our own lives. It's so true. We come across situations or we come across people and we're just like, man, if only that person could change. Man, if only that person would just do this. Man, I'm really afraid of that person because they have a lot of power over my life, and I don't know, if I'm going to, come into work and I'm still going to have my job, or if I'm, it's so easy for us to get, afraid of people in our lives, and it's so easy for us to struggle internally with our own pride. Here with Jacob, it's so hard for us to let go and say, you know what, I'm just going to leave this in the hands of the Lord, and I'm going to trust him with whatever I do. And that struggle brings us to this is the first ever fill in the blank that I will use. I know I haven't been using them, but I decided that I was going to do it. So I have a fill in the blank, and I'm being very explicit in making sure that the people know that it's the fill in the blank time. So I don't have any cues, it's just fill in the blank. But the main thing that I really got from this, as I started reading this story, and I'm like, I think I'm just going to go through this story. But then looking over the entire life of Jacob, there's so much to get from his life. I'm like, how can we, you can't even understand the story unless you understand his entire life. And here at the end, I just simply put, we must be willing to die to ourselves and live by faith in Jesus Christ to grow in God's time. And that's so important because not only do we have to die to ourselves daily to live as Christians and let go of our own plans, let go of our own future. And so many times we want to take God and drag him into what we're doing. We're like, God, I'm sailing this way. I'm going this way. I want you to come with me and bless me and make sure that I have clothing and make sure that I have food, make sure that I have everything that I need. And really, it's the opposite. God's saying, I'm taking you over here, and you're going to trust me, and you're going to be my instrument. You're going to be the thing that I use to craft masterpieces in the lives of other people. You're going to be the thing that I use to show love to this person. You're going to be the person that I use to reach a group of people who don't even know who Christ is. But the thing is, we get so caught up in trying to drag God into our own plans, into our own lives, because we rely so much on our own power that we miss all the opportunities that God could be doing through us. If we open up our lives to say, it's not on my power, it's you, God. Show me today, by the power of the Holy Spirit, just lead me into whatever situation needs to happen. Lead me into a conversation. Lead me into some situation that, might feel uncomfortable. It might not feel great, but it's an opportunity for me to show your love and do what's right. And so many times we think that, man, I just wish that I could just pray some kind of special prayer, or I could just go to church enough, or I could just do the right things enough, and I will just I wish I could just be like Christ. And I will tell you, if you come to church and all of Christianity, if the only thing that you really experience are like some chandeliers and some carpet and these ferns, which I have yet to figure out, And if that's all you've experienced, and the stained glass and all this other stuff, you've experienced maybe like 1% of Christianity. There's so much more to living as a Christian than just coming to a building with these things in it, or just saying, oh yeah, I go to this church down the street. What if you said, hey, yeah, I'm really struggling with this, or I'm really going through this, but Christ gives me the power, because it's not about me, it's not about my life. That's such a testimony to people when they, when people approach you, when people ask you, or when you approach somebody else to share your faith with somebody. That's so huge, because there's so much more going on here. I mean, we read about this story, and you might say, yeah, but I'm not Jacob. But the reality is, I look at Jacob's life, and is that not so true? I mean, I really started really following the Lord when I was 17. I'm 20, almost 21 now. That's only 3 years, maybe 3.5 years. I mean, do you think that there's still things in my life that I wish weren't in there, things that I'm still working through, situations that I'm still man, this is going to be really hard to trust the Lord to, do this, but I have to trust him and I have to go, of course. And that's only a few years. There's people in this room, I'm sure, people who have been here, been Christians for decades, and in his life right here in the Bible, this is such a great story to have in here, and he does provide so many great examples of what it means to walk with the Lord. But, I mean, the things Jacob does even after this incredible moment with God, I mean, we see him still showing favoritism at the very end of the book with his sons as he's handing out the blessings and he's picking favorites. We still show him continuing to grow all throughout his life and still making mistakes, just like us. And what's so incredible, you don't have to turn there, but just chapter 26, as I was going through this book, found something incredible. Genesis chapter 26, just listen, or you can turn there. Verse 5, because Abraham obeyed me and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. And he's talking about how because Abraham did these things, the blessings are going to come to you. He's talking about Isaac. Is that not so incredible that we read about Abraham's life and all the failures that he had and all the ups and downs that he had, and yet still at the end of it, God is kind of looking upon his life after Abraham has already died and the promises are on Isaac, and he's saying, because he kept my laws, because he did good in my sight. I mean, that's so incredible, and that should be such an encouragement that no matter where you're at, the Lord is here, and he sees your heart. He sees where you want to go. It's so easy for us to pinpoint those mistakes and those terrible things that we do in our lives, and we're like, man, I cannot believe that I just did that. Man, God's probably looking upon me right now, and he's like, man, Brian, man, how could you do that? Man, Abram, how could you do that? But yet we see these lives of these incredible people of the faith in Genesis, and even through the ups and downs, God is still saying, at the very end, he's saying, well done, good and faithful servant. And if you're here and you're a Christian, I hope that that's such an encouragement to you, that you see that God is a God who wants to come down and wrestle with us, and he wants to fight with us. He wants to wrestle with our hearts to get our desires in line with his desires. And it doesn't matter what your past is, we're all on this journey, and we're all in different places. And if you're here, I want to tell you the only way to walk in faith and the only way to walk in peace, as we see Jacob walking here at the end as he runs to Esau, it's only through Christ. Christ is the only one who gives peace. Through Christ taking on the wrath of God, we see that we no longer have to, not only do we no longer have to fear the wrath of God, we don't have to fear this world anymore. All the things that, constantly cause us fear, constantly cause us sorrow, constantly cause us to doubt, we can bring those things to the Lord and say, no, my faith is in Christ. It's only through faith in Christ that we're able to overcome in this world. And it's only through faith in what Christ has done and what God is doing in your life that will cause you to be able to continue to walk, facing incredible challenges, but knowing that he's with you. And I know that last time I was here, I did 5-minute challenge. The 5-minute challenge is returning. And the 5-minute challenge is spend 5 minutes every day this week praying with God over any kind of situation or any kind of person that seems impossible, and don't let go and don't let off, but believe in faith and wrestle with him. I don't know if this is something that's been going on in your life for years, or this is something that happened last week, but something that you need to do business with God about, something that you need to fight with God about, something that needs to be done with you and him. And I hope that this message, this isn't how I usually, this is kind of weird because I don't usually do the whole storytelling thing. But I just think that it's incredible. I mean, just opening up the Bible and reading it, you can just read stories of just these incredible people, and there's so much in between the lines that shows how alike they are to us. And I hope that as we leave from this place, we can focus less on the material, the things that are seen, even though those are important and they do hold importance, but we can focus on what's not seen. We can focus on what's God wanting me to do in my life. And we can forget the past and continue to move on, seeing and knowing that God is doing something in our lives. But just in case you're kind of sitting there and you're thinking, well, there's really nothing going on in my life. I'm pretty much good. And there's these other people, and they need to get their act together, whoever that might be in your life. Then I'll put you in God's shoes. I'll put you in his shoes. So picture yourself in God's shoes in the story, who came down, wrestled with Jacob, had so much patience with him, had so much peace with him. I mean, God could have come down and just dropped some fire on him and consumed him, and been totally just to do so with everything that had been going on. But God meets him where he is, and he shows him grace, and he shows him mercy, and he continues to guide him through his entire life, through God's entire plan. He uses Jacob in his ups and his downs, and continues to change him and transform him. So for those people in your life who are struggling, or people in your life who are far from the Lord, give grace. Everybody is in a different place in their walk with the Lord, as we clearly see from stories of people just like Jacob. So thank you again for the opportunity to come here. If you need to pray here at the end, man, goodness, if you come down here to pray, I'd love to pray over you. I'd love to pray with you. And if you want to come down and pray for me, that would be fantastic too. If you have any questions over the story, if you have any questions about Genesis or anything, I'll be back here with Pastor Clyde. So I'll pray and we'll start that time. Father, I thank you so much for your word. Thank you so much for giving me the words to speak. Lord, I know this is definitely not of my power. This is definitely not me, Lord. You give me so much grace and so much strength. And I thank you so much for just giving this word to all of us, God. And as you continue to grow and shape us and form us, I pray that you would continue to be with this church. I thank you so much for Larry. I thank you for Pastor Clyde. I thank you so much for Pastor John, Lord. God, I thank you for everybody who's on staff here, everybody who serves here in any form or function, everybody who shows up here every Sunday, God. Just to gather and be a body of believers is so great. Lord, after being in a world that at many times seems so just hostile to us, hostile to Christianity, God, it's just so encouraging to know that you have not forgotten about us, Lord. And I pray, God, that, Lord, we would continue to seek you out, God. Those who are in this room right now, God, following you, I pray that they would continue to seek you out, God. They would continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper, God, and continue to wrestle with you, God. And I pray over those in this room, Father, who are wrestling with false gods, wrestling with idols. Lord, I pray, God, that you would just bring an end to that, Lord. You'd bring freedom into their lives. You would let them know that, Lord, your promise and your way, Lord, will cost them everything, God, but it will be worth everything, Lord, and increasingly more, God. I love you so much, Lord, and I just pray, God, that your Holy Spirit would move now over this room, Lord, and that you would just do a work in the lives of every single one of us. We thank you again, God. I thank you so much for all these people once again and this opportunity, Lord. Praise you and bless your name, Lord. Amen.
Amen. As we stand and as we sing, if you need prayer today, would you please come? Abram's going to be right down here with you.
Soul, my sin oppressed, there's mercy with the Lord, and he will surely give you rest by trusting in his word. Only trust him, only trust him. Only trust him. His blood, rich blessings to bestow. Plunge now into the crimson flood that washes white as snow. Only trust Him, only trust Him, only trust Him now. He will save you, He will save you, He will save you now. Yes, Jesus is the truth, the way that leads you into rest. Believe in Him without delay, and you are fully blessed. Only trust Him, only trust Him, only trust Him now. He will save you, He will save you, He will save you now.
Amen. Can we get Little Jones to pray? Sure, absolutely. We're doing that special thing for you right now. So thank y'all for being here today. It's really an honor and a joy. Now, many years ago, I was 14 years old when I really wrestled with God about being called into ministry to preach. And when I finally announced my calling to preach when I was 14, yeah, that was a long time ago, ladies and gentlemen. I remember how people would be there and they'd encourage me. And I remember the day that the church I was attending gave me a piece of paper. And it's basically just a licensing for ministry. It's the first step. He's not going to be ordained today. That's another process. We're going to see John Smith do that at the last Sunday of this month. He's going to preach. He's going to be ordained that day. But today we're going to be presenting Abram a license for ministry. Now, what does this mean? It means we believe in Abram. We believe that God's called him into ministry. Abram, I believe in you. I've believed in you since you were a little boy. When I saw something special in Abram that was different from all the other kids, God's going to use you greatly. God's going to use you in mighty, mighty ways. So here's a certificate of license. By the way, you can marry people now legally because you have this. Don't know if that'll come in handy. Maybe it will. But the one thing that I want us to do, I would love for Abram to just get right here, and I want people to gather around him and pray for him. Yes, sir.
Hey, I just want to thank all of you guys for allowing me to come here into the church and preach and be a part of this place. If you look right there, that's my family right there, guy in the pink peach shirt, and then my grandparents right there, and then that's Rachel right there. She's my fiance. And then that's my family. But then I also consider these guys my family right here too. And these guys are all, these three guys right in there, all go to school with me. Jonathan, Will, and Joe, I love you guys. So many times they encourage me. Both of these people encourage me so much. And I know that I would not be standing right here if it wasn't for those people right there. So thank you guys so much. And thank you everybody here who encouraged me. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And family, would you come up here? Ken, April, grandparents, Rachel, would you come up here, please? Miss Rachel is soon going to be Mrs. Abram Ehl, and she's excited about that. And so we're going to be praying over them as well. Y'all come on up here. Friends, come on up here because Abram has someone in particular that he wants to pray during this time. And now that they're up here, deacons, non-deacons, just somebody who just walked in off the street, if you'd like to come up here and pray, just come on up here. We're going to pray over Abram now as he begins his journey into ministry and continues that in a calling of the Lord Jesus Christ. Now, who is it, Abram, that you wanted to pray? This gentleman right here. Here you go. He's going to dismiss us, and Abram and I will be in the back. Abram's going to Israel in January, and he's taking donations and stuff today back here in the back, and he'll be back there with me after the service. So let's pray and thank God for this young man who I considered an honor to be a minister with.
Let's pray. Father God, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to come to you. We thank you for the opportunity to come here together, fellowship with you, Lord, and be able to be in a country where we can do this freely. Father, thank you so much for my brother Abram. Thank you for everything you have done through him, and we know that you have many, many plans for him in the future. I pray that you will bless his ministry. You will bless him and his family, Lord, and you will use him in a mighty way, Lord. I pray that you will keep the demons away from him and keep the thoughts away from him that he's not good enough, Lord, that he is not good enough for this ministry, he's not good enough for Rachel. All these thoughts, take them out of his mind, Lord, and I pray that you will just insert your will in his mind and you will insert you. Lord, thank you so much for the opportunities that you've given him here on campus, all the places that you've given him these opportunities to spread your gospel. And I pray and I praise that he has many, many more opportunities after this, Lord. Just thank you for him, his love for the church, his love for you, and all the things that he'll be doing. I pray for him and Rachel, their relationship, Lord. I would pray that you bless that marriage, Lord, and I pray that you will bless them and you will use them in a mighty way. You will use them to spread the gospel. And we just praise you and we thank you. In your name I pray, amen.